Legend has it that there was a wealthy, self-centered king in the interiors of India a long time ago. He was a lover and connoisseur of all beautiful things. He once heard of the beauty of the princess of a nearby kingdom and eagerly sought her hand. The princess, knowing that the king would lay siege to her kingdom if she refused, agreed to marry him on one condition, that he would not marry any other. The infatuated king readily gave his word. Let me remind you that the punishment for not keeping one's word was banishment or death in those times, and even the king wasn't spared if found guilty. The wedding was a huge affair, and the Maharajas and Maharanis of all the allied kingdoms were invited. The king gifted a palace made of marble, complete with a Turkish bath, which was a luxury in those days, to his new queen. Exotic perfumes, silk dresses, and jewelry with finely cut precious stones were showered upon her. It would have been a story with a good ending had it not been for the king's wayward ways. After 2 years of marriage, the king set his eyes on another princess whose beauty was famed to be unparalleled. He tried to restrain himself out of fear of the consequences of breaking his word until he could not any longer. She had to go. Thus, one day, when the queen and her lady companions went to the Turkish bath, the doors were shut and locked from outside. Oil was poured instead of hot water and lit. They say that the shrieks were inhuman and heard over a large distance, but those inside were beyond help. The palace was saved, but the ladies sadly were not. This is where the story takes a turn. They couldn't find the remains of the queen and only the queen. The bath was searched thoroughly, which was then expanded to the palace and its vicinity, but the queen or her remains were just not to be found. The king died due to a mysterious illness, shortly before he could remarry. The marble palace was soon abandoned. Over the centuries, many wondered how well it was preserved, how it still looked new and well maintained. Some claim that the spirit of the beloved queen looked after her, but I know the truth. I was recently appointed by the local authorities to maintain the garden and the palace. An earthquake struck our region yesterday. I quickly went to the palace to check on it and saw one of the columns had cracked and was bent. Had the concerned authorities reached on time, they would have seen what I saw, blood trickling out of the crack. At first, I couldn't believe it. Compared to a paltry 20 by 30 site back home in India, it didn't even cost half of that. I finally owned a big house and a lawn. I had a freaking lawn that I had to mow like they showed in the movies. It's a great neighborhood, just white people household as far as eyes can see. On that Bengali bastard Paribarton's face when I tell him I moved to a neighborhood like this. But my happiness was short-lived. The old guy that lived here before had left all of his junk and it cost me almost $200 to haul all that shit to the dump. Upside was, he did leave a lot of cutlery and shit. I don't trust white people with this much cutlery. Either they are secretly communist hippies or secretly racist clan people, no middle ground whatsoever. So I kept a yard sale. The silverware didn't fetch much, but he had all these videotape boxes. So my neighbor dropped by and offered to take all of these movies off my hand for $40, but he gave me a $50. I thought I could push something else on him and keep the extra 10 for some good bhujia and pakora with my beer for later. So I had these weird leather card collection of the old guy, and it honestly stunk a lot. I'd have probably thrown it in the garbage next day. They were just visiting cars size wrinkle, but neatly cut leathery rectangles with weird names on them. So the greedy me asked if he wanted this weird card with weird names and dates on them, hundreds and hundreds of them in a wooden box. When the guy laughingly took one of the cards to look at, his face went cold. He dropped everything and started running away screaming like a madman. And 10 minutes later, my yard was swarming with police cars. That bastard had called cops on me. I was so confused. Then they came and examined the cards. After all the chaos settled, I was informed that those cards were made of human skin, and each card belonged to a different kid that went missing from a residential school the previous owner worked years ago. They counted over 500 cards.